You're in the shower. Nobody else is home. No phone, no noise, just water running. And somehow, without planning it, you're in the middle of a full argument. You're explaining yourself clearly, saying exactly the right thing, and the other
You
person
see?
finally gets it. They understand. They apologize.
I
Everything lands
understand.
perfectly. And then the water goes cold and you snap back to reality. That conversation never happened. That person wasn't even there. But for a moment, it felt completely real. Your chest was tight. Your jaw was set. You were genuinely fired up about something that existed only in your own mind. If that sounds familiar, I want you to know something important before we go any further. You are not weird, you are not broken, and you are definitely not alone. But what's happening in your brain when you do this is genuinely fascinating, and understanding it might change the way you see yourself. Your brain never actually stops working. Here's something most people don't realize about the human brain. Even when you're doing nothing, your brain is doing a lot. Scientists discovered something called the default mode network. It's the part of your brain that activates when you're not focused on a task, when you're daydreaming, walking, falling asleep, or staring out a window. And what does this network do during all that quiet time? It simulates. It runs through possible situations. It rehearses conversations. It imagines futures. It replays the past. Your brain is essentially running a background program at all times, testing out different versions of events. This is actually one of the things that makes humans so capable. We can mentally experience something before it happens in real life. We can prepare, plan, and process without physically being there. Athletes use this deliberately. Before a big race or a game, elite performers will close their eyes and walk through every detail in their mind. The movement, the feeling, the outcome. Research shows this actually improves real performance. The brain responds to vivid imagination similarly to how it responds to real experience. So when your mind creates those imaginary conversations, it's using one of its most powerful tools. The question is why it keeps reaching for that tool, even when you didn't ask it to. 3 types of imaginary scenarios. Most people run. Not all fake scenarios feel the same. There are actually 3 very distinct patterns that psychologists notice in people who do this frequently. The first one is the argument replay. This is where you go back to a conversation that already happened, except this time you say the right thing, the perfect response, the one you couldn't find in the moment. Maybe someone said something dismissive to you at work and you just said, "Yeah, okay," and walked away. But an hour later, in your head, you delivered the most precise, calm, devastating reply. Why does the brain do this? Because the original moment felt unresolved. Something was left unfinished, and your mind is trying to close it. It's looking for a sense of completion that the real conversation didn't provide. The second pattern is the future success scenario. This is where you imagine the version of your life where things finally go right. You picture yourself giving a speech, getting the recognition, proving to someone that they were wrong about you. You imagine the moment where people finally see what you're worth. These scenarios can feel genuinely motivating. They can give you real energy, but they can also quietly become a trap, which we'll talk about in a moment. The third pattern is the worst-case spiral. This one doesn't feel good at all. This is where your brain starts rehearsing everything that could go wrong. You imagine someone misunderstanding you, a situation collapsing, an embarrassing moment playing out in front of people you respect. Your body tenses up. Your heart rate changes, you start problem solving for a disaster that hasn't happened and may never happen. Your brain is trying to protect you by preparing you, but often it ends up exhausting you instead. The deeper reason this happens so often, here's what I really want you to sit with, because this is the part most people miss. People who imagine fake scenarios constantly are almost always people who spend a lot of energy thinking about how other people see them. Not because they're vain or desperate for attention, but because their brain is wired to be deeply attuned to social situations. They're replaying conversations because they care about how they came across. They're rehearsing future moments because they want to get it right. They're imagining worst cases because they don't want to be caught off guard. At the core of all of it is one quiet feeling, a need for some sense of control in situations where the outcome feels uncertain. And this is where imagination becomes so appealing, almost addictive. Because in your imagination, you have total control. In the imaginary argument, you say exactly the right thing. In the imaginary success scenario, people respond exactly how you hoped. In the imaginary disaster, you've already prepared the perfect response. Nothing surprises you. Nothing goes sideways. Everything makes sense. Real life is messier than that. People don't respond the way you expect. Conversations go in directions you didn't see coming. Outcomes are unpredictable. So your brain starts quietly preferring the version of events where it's in charge. And the more you visit that space, the more comfortable it gets. And the more comfortable it gets, the more often you go back. When it starts becoming a problem, let me be clear about something. Imagination is not the enemy. It is genuinely one of the most powerful things your brain does. The ability to mentally simulate the future is part of what makes humans so creative, so adaptable, so capable of planning. The problem only starts when imagination begins replacing life instead of preparing you for it. Here are a few honest signs that the line is getting blurry. You feel a stronger emotional payoff from imaginary conversations than from real ones. The real version always disappoints compared to what your mind built. You spend more time rehearsing for conversations than actually having them. The preparation becomes the thing. You feel mentally tired at the end of the day, even though nothing particularly demanding actually happened. Running simulations all day costs real energy. You use imagination as a way to feel okay without actually addressing the thing that's bothering you. The mental rehearsal gives you just enough emotional relief that the motivation to act quietly fades. That last one is the sneaky one. It's called mental substitution. Your brain gets a small hit of the feeling you actually want, just enough to take the edge off, and so the urgency to do something real about it disappears. What's actually going on underneath? If you imagine fake scenarios a lot, there are a few common things sitting underneath that habit. Unmet emotional needs that haven't been spoken out loud. The imaginary conversation where someone finally understands you might be pointing to a real conversation you've been avoiding. A fear of how real interactions might go. Imagination is safe. Real conversations carry real risk. Real rejection is possible. Real misunderstanding is possible. Your brain prefers the version it can control. A very active, fast-moving mind that needs somewhere to put all that energy. Sometimes this habit is just what happens when a sharp, sensitive brain isn't given enough real things to chew on. None of these are character flaws. All of them are things you can work with once you see them clearly. The shift that actually helps. The goal isn't to stop imagining things. That would be like trying to stop dreaming. You can't, and you probably shouldn't want to. The goal is to notice when imagination is serving you and when it's quietly substituting for the real thing. When you catch yourself deep in a fake scenario, try asking one honest question. What would it take to have some version of this in real life? Not perfectly, not the scripted version your brain wrote, but something real. Something that actually moves the situation forward. Because here is the truth about imaginary conversations. They can feel deeply satisfying, they can feel like resolution, but they leave something unfinished in the actual world, and your brain knows that. Which is why it keeps going back, running the scenario again, tweaking the details, trying one more time to find the ending it's looking for. The ending it's looking for can only happen in real life. The real conversation, imperfect and unscripted, is the only one that actually closes the loop. Your imagination is not a problem to fix. It's a signal worth following.